Hello everyone! Today we'll revisit one of Meghan Markle's earlier interviews, which serves as a prime example of the tactics she often uses during her public appearances, whether in interviews, discussions, or events. Recently, with Prince Harry conducting yet another interview, we can observe notable similarities in the strategies he employs. Meghan's appearance on The Ellen Show in 2021, just months after she and Harry's controversial interview with Oprah, offers several insights into her approach. In this interview, we can identify behaviors that seem to weaken her narrative and public persona. Upon reflection, these moments reveal instances of inconsistency and possible manipulation, particularly when considering promises that were made but never fulfilled. Once again, another cause is mentioned, only to be seemingly abandoned, much like many of her previous initiatives. Let's first address her outfit. Meghan is wearing a loose-fitting blouse with large sleeves and cutouts throughout, paired with black trousers. The trousers seem to be mid to high rise, though they appear unusually high on her. The way her outfit has been styled, with the blouse slightly tucked out and hanging just below the waistline, helps give the illusion of a more defined waist, which works in her favor. That said, a slightly lower rise pair of trousers might have been more effective, as the voluminous sleeves seem a bit overwhelming here. However, the fact that the trousers aren't dragging on the floor is a definite positive. The neckline of the blouse appears to be the most flattering element of the ensemble. It draws attention to the collar, which features delicate pleats, creating a focal point near her face, an effective approach for television. Unfortunately, this also means it doesn't draw much focus to her shoulders. The focus of attention naturally falls on this area. Since she spends most of the interview seated, the wide, spacious sleeves with their cutouts come across as somewhat chaotic. It almost looks as if Edward Scissorhands had a hand in the design, giving the outfit a slightly disorganized and messy appearance due to the excessive volume and cuts. The sleeves are quite distracting, fluttering around as she moves her hands, which only serves to exaggerate her gestures, something that becomes a notable part of her communication style during this conversation. Additionally, she wears her hair down, which adds to the somewhat crowded look. Your attention is drawn to the collar, but with her hair falling over it, the overall effect feels a bit heavy and cluttered. The overall effect feels a bit restrictive, especially as her hair covers her shoulders and frames her face. Combined with the oversized sleeves, it creates a somewhat claustrophobic look. A different hairstyle, such as an updo, a half-back style, or even a different cut, might have helped alleviate this. While the outfit isn't the worst we've seen, there's room for improvement in several areas. In general, this style is better than some of her past choices, but I think adding more color would have elevated it. A jewel tone like eggplant or teal, or perhaps a pastel green, could have been excellent choices for a blouse with a different design. A softer fabric with fewer cutouts and less volume would have created a more polished and balanced look. Another point regarding her hair, I wish she had styled it to open up her face a bit more. When she wears it like this, it not only closes off that area, but also emphasizes the width of her jawline. Meghan has a diamond-shaped face, and the broadest part isn't at her chin, but around the jaw area. Pulling her hair back or creating a new focal point would have been a better choice, as the current style makes that area appear heavier, drawing too much attention to it and closing off the rest of her face. It's not the most flattering look for her, in my opinion. The interview started by focusing quite a lot on her acting career, which, let's be honest, wasn't particularly remarkable. Casting is an extremely competitive field, with countless aspiring actors attending auditions regularly. To be fair, anyone who secures a recurring role in a television show and remains part of the cast for several seasons has achieved a certain level of success, far more than many actors who never get speaking roles and are often cast as extras. So landing a part on a TV show and becoming a recurring character over multiple seasons is, in itself, an accomplishment. However, this kind of success is more akin to a typical acting career, not on par with the stature of a movie star or a lead role in a TV series, where the actor carries the entire show. Meghan's role was more in the mid to lower range of the acting spectrum. Being cast in a position like hers, where she was listed 6th or 7th on the call sheet, indicates a level of success, but not a starring role. The hope with roles like Meghan's is often that they will lead to bigger opportunities. However, she didn't possess the skills to take that next step. She was never cast in a more prominent TV show, and her role on Suits didn't evolve significantly over time to make her a more central character. It largely stayed the same. She also struggled to break into film roles. There are various snippets from old social media posts and short interviews where she was promoting brands like Bobbi Brown Cosmetics while auditioning for movies. She was clearly trying to transition into film, aiming to build a bigger acting career and become a more notable actor. But ultimately, her acting abilities were not strong enough to propel her forward. As a result, she never landed any major film roles. If she had been a standout talent, it's likely that people working on Suits and beyond would have recognized that she had something special to offer. Had she been exceptionally talented, she could have found great success in movies and film, but because she wasn't, her acting career wasn't particularly noteworthy. That's not to say it wasn't successful in general or personally for her, but in terms of acting, it wasn't an extraordinary career. So, focusing so much on her acting days at the beginning of the interview felt a bit misplaced, especially given how unremarkable that phase of her career was. The interview appeared to be a strategic move to shift the narrative away from the poorly received Oprah interview and instead highlight Meghan's past as an actress. From Meghan's perspective, it also served as a signal to Hollywood, as she was, at that time, trying to build connections within the industry. According to insiders close to the Sussexes, often referred to as Camp Sussex. By those leaking information, the goal was for Meghan to land leading roles in Hollywood. This interview took place just before reports began circulating that Meghan intended to star in a remake of The Bodyguard with Kevin Costner. It was clear that she was aiming for a Hollywood angle here. As the interview begins, it takes less than a minute for her to start irritating viewers. She makes a gesture immediately after sitting down, a familiar move that we've seen from her, especially during her early days with the royal family. It comes across as insincere, as if she's trying too hard, or even as an example of poor acting, a pattern that has followed Meghan throughout this interview and beyond. She often seems to be performing rather than being genuine, and that can be unsettling to witness. People want authenticity, and when someone appears to be faking it, it tends to put others off. For instance, take note of how she holds her hand in front of her face. It's a subtle but telling example of this behavior. She often does this while chuckling. It's one of her signature expressions, holding her palm near her nose and letting out a laugh or smile. This gesture can come across as if she's trying to hide her smile, which some interpret as inauthentic. It can give the impression that she's concealing a fake smile rather than genuinely laughing. That's how it appears to many viewers, though I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. When you have a genuine connection with someone, your laughter and smiles are more open and natural. There's trust and good chemistry, and when they make you laugh, your body language opens up. Genuine happiness often leads to more expressive reactions. Throwing your head back in laughter, for instance, shows a sense of joy and openness in the moment. In her recent interview, Meghan Markle employed a range of blocking motions, such as hiding her smile and raising her hands in front of her. These gestures may seem subtle, but they significantly affect the perception of the interview. Blocking motions like those used by Meghan can create a barrier between the interviewee and the audience. This technique often comes across as unapproachable, contrary to the intended friendly and engaging tone. The choice to focus on Meghan's acting career as a strategy for the interview raises questions. While leveraging her acting background might seem like a way to connect with the audience, it appears to fall short. Instead of enhancing relatability, this angle may have contributed to a disconnect. The portrayal of her past roles and experiences did not resonate as intended, leaving some viewers questioning the effectiveness of this approach. Another significant aspect of the conversation was Meghan's attempt to emphasize her humble beginnings. This strategy aimed to present her as relatable and down to earth. However, the execution seemed forced and lacked authenticity. The effort to showcase her modest roots, while well-intentioned, did not succeed in bridging the gap between her and the audience. The resulting narrative felt contrived rather than genuinely relatable. A recurring theme in Meghan's interview was her attempt to portray a light-hearted and humorous persona. Unfortunately, these efforts fell flat. The inclusion of anecdotes from her upbringing and acting career aimed to inject humor and relatability, but they often missed the mark. One particularly poorly received skit added to the sense that these attempts were unconvincing. By the end of the interview, it became evident that Meghan's approach failed to maintain audience engagement. The continuous missteps in her attempt to connect with viewers led to diminishing interest. The audience's response was tepid, reflecting a lack of connection with the content presented. The overall impression left was one of disengagement rather than the intended rapport. In summary, Meghan Markle's recent interview struggled with several strategic missteps. From ineffective blocking motions to a poorly received acting career angle and unsuccessful attempts at humor, these elements collectively contributed to a less impactful presentation. Understanding these issues provides insight into the challenges of crafting a relatable and engaging interview strategy. Let's examine some of the mistakes Meghan makes that can alienate or isolate her audience, diminishing relatability. Ellen starts the conversation abruptly with Meghan's car story. Meghan claims she had to climb in through the back because the door wouldn't open, and she laughs heartily about it. Meghan's laughter suggests she thought this anecdote would amuse the audience and serve as a strong introduction. However, the story itself isn't particularly engaging or funny. Her enthusiasm for it and the way she presents it come across as self-indulgent, especially given the awkward start to the story. It lacks organic appeal and doesn't resonate well with the audience. I'll spare you the details of some of these scenes because they're quite uncomfortable to watch, but Meghan's reaction to her car's malfunction is striking. She seems disproportionately delighted by the fact that the driver's side door didn't work and she had to climb through the back. Her continual laughter, combined with her repeated gestures towards the audience, nodding, chuckling, and smiling, indicates she expects the audience to find it just as amusing. We can infer two things from this. Either Meghan is so out of touch that she genuinely believes the story is hilarious, suggesting a poor sense of humor, or she is attempting to create a connection and win the audience over. This latter approach could be seen as somewhat manipulative, using specific phrasing and gestures to gain approval. While this strategy might work in a speech or similar setting, it requires that her words and actions align authentically. For a story to resonate with an audience, it needs to be something they can engage with, whether it's funny, relevant, or significant. Unfortunately, none of these elements were present in Meghan's anecdote, causing it to fall flat. It wasn't humorous, and her exaggerated laughter seemed forced. The audience didn't share in her amusement, and even Ellen appeared to struggle with maintaining a positive reaction. Had I been in that situation, I might have handled it differently. For example, I'd probably downplay the awkwardness by saying something like, "Oh, I must have left my resume and highlighters back there," and then playfully crawl into the trunk. That way, it becomes a lighthearted moment. As for the timing, this incident seems to have occurred before Meghan's Suits days, so it's been a while. As we can see, Meghan seems quite entertained with herself, though I prefer to give people the benefit of the doubt rather than assume the worst in every situation. Nonetheless, this part of the interview is incredibly awkward and cringeworthy. It seems that Meghan feels a much deeper connection with Ellen than Ellen feels with Meghan. Meghan even refers to Ellen as Auntie Ellen, which feels out of place. While Meghan was clearly aiming to be humorous, the attempt falls flat. In discussing their early relationship, Meghan recounts attending a Halloween party with Harry while they were still dating and had to be discreet. She describes how Harry came to Toronto to join her and their friends, Eugenie and Jack, for a fun night out in costumes before their relationship became public knowledge. Had no one known about your relationship? No, it was a post-apocalyptic themed party. We wore all sorts of wild costumes and managed to enjoy one last wonderful night out before our relationship became public. The entire episode feels forced, and there's a particular moment worth noting. Meghan makes a comment about parenting one child is a hobby, two is parenting. The internet suggests that Meghan presents this as her own perspective on parenting, but she claims someone told her that having one child is considered a pastime, while having two is seen as true parenting. Do we really believe this? Many people give Meghan credit for the remark, but they are not suggesting she was quoting someone else. Instead, it's perceived that Meghan made this statement based on common belief, which seems to be a relatively uncommon expression. It appears she thought this would make a memorable line. So Meghan claims someone told her that one child is a hobby, two is parenting, but this appears to be something she invented herself and tried to weave into the conversation in a seemingly organic manner. It was unfortunately another instance where her attempt fell flat. She then shifts to talking about selling scrunchies in elementary school, trying to build rapport with the interviewer. Meghan often employs conversational tactics to create a sense of connection, but these attempts frequently miss the mark. For instance, she uses phrases like right or like at the end of her statements to imply that everyone should agree with her. In this case, she says, "I was in elementary school, so I was maybe 9, right?" This approach is meant to convey that her experiences are universally relatable, but it often comes off as forced. It's odd that Meghan would reference her age while selling scrunchies, especially when Ellen wouldn't have any way of knowing that detail. It's a strange tactic akin to asking a parent or sibling to help recall your age during a specific event, like a soccer competition. For instance, you might say, was I 9 or 10, and someone who was there could provide the answer. However, Ellen, who is less familiar with Meghan's personal history, wouldn't have this context. Using this approach in the interview, saying something like, I was in elementary school, so I was maybe 9, right? Seems out of place. It doesn't fit the conversation and makes it clear that Meghan is overly rehearsed, trying to give the impression of spontaneity. When you're not particularly skilled at acting and aim to appear unrehearsed, such forced attempts often result in awkward errors, highlighting the disconnect and making the conversation seem less genuine. You're not great at improvisation, which becomes evident in the repeated focus on the Halloween theme. Meghan talked about staying in rather than going out, and then mentioned how Archie only briefly wore his dinosaur costume before Harry had to persuade him to keep the headpiece on, while Lily dressed as a skunk. Meghan's account of these details, like mentioning that Lily is teething, feels somewhat forced. I can't help but have a negative impression of Meghan in this context. She seems to be trying to present herself in a coquettish manner, but this approach is more suitable for someone much younger. At her age, this behavior appears out of place and somewhat ridiculous. Additionally, she has physical features such as large feet or hammer toes and possibly a pigeon-toed gait, which are noticeable during public appearances like at the Invictus Games. Meghan Markle's fashion choices often generate strong reactions. Some people feel that her outfits, such as the long cream pants with a striped blouse or the various shades of green, do not always match or complement each other. This could be interpreted as a lack of coordination or a deliberate unconventional style choice. Fashion is subjective, and what some see as a mistake might be seen by others as a bold statement. Regarding her claims of financial difficulties, there is a complex history involving her family's support. Meghan has shared stories about financial struggles, but there are counterpoints, such as her father's financial support and the relatively high-value vehicle she has driven. These elements can lead to questions about the accuracy of her claims. The role of Meghan's father in her education is another point of contention. Meghan's father did contribute financially to her college education, but she has not often highlighted this in public statements. This omission can be viewed as a lack of acknowledgement of her father's support. When discussing Meghan Markle or any public figure, it's crucial to base opinions on verified information and maintain a balanced perspective. Public figures often have complex personal histories that can be interpreted in various ways. In recent times, we have witnessed a growing number of people manipulating reality to create fictional narratives. One prime example involves a woman who doesn't even speak to her father. Despite the estrangement, she continuously spins tales, including fabricating stories from television shows to craft a false persona. But what's really behind these tall tales? A centerpiece of this web of lies revolves around a car. She claims ownership of a specific vehicle in a story that has been refuted by her own father. According to him, the car in question was just a loaner while her actual vehicle was in the shop. He went on to say that her entire story was fabricated. The narrative she tells is not rooted in reality, but rather in a sitcom-like plot reminiscent of popular television shows. This isn't an isolated incident. She has a history of borrowing stories from television and film, twisting them to suit her needs, and passing them off as her own experiences. It's almost as if she's living in a fantasy world, one where she can appropriate anything from pop culture and use it to enhance her own fabricated reality. This imitation and plagiarism have become her trademark, making it hard to discern fact from fiction. What makes this situation even more concerning is the total lack of authenticity in her storytelling. It's not just the lies that are problematic, but the lifeless, monotonous way she delivers them. Every story feels devoid of meaning, lacking any substantial or informative content. In short, everything she says feels like a hollow, rehearsed performance. At the core of this behavior lies a narcissistic personality. For decades, she has exhibited traits of being a spoiled, self-centered individual. Her need for attention and validation drives her to fabricate stories, often at the expense of others. This narcissism not only clouds her perception of reality, but also creates a toxic environment for those around her. Despite her fabrications and grandiose tales, she's quick to highlight how privileged she is, albeit in a twisted way. She acknowledges that she just gets by financially, but considers herself fortunate to have the basics, a roof over her head, food on her table, and heating during cold months. But this confession is often used as a shield to mask the more glaring issue, her deep-rooted dishonesty. Ultimately, her life has been one long, exaggerated performance. From borrowing stories from television shows to lying about her financial status, everything is designed to enhance her personal image. This endless cycle of falsehoods reveals a person more concerned with appearances than the truth. The challenge now lies in distinguishing between the real and the fake, as the line between the two continues to blur. Meghan Markle seems to live in her own world, far removed from reality. Known for throwing her teddy out of the pram over the slightest criticism, she never seems to get a reality check. Her latest attempt at reinventing herself, becoming a self-proclaimed foodie and home cook. It appears there's no niche too small for a duchess in exile to tackle. In her new role, Meghan claims to be a passionate home cook, regularly whipping up gourmet meals in her kitchen. However, her appearances on cooking shows paint a very different picture. For someone who is supposedly so at home in the kitchen, Meghan consistently seems to require a lot of assistance for even the simplest dishes. One would expect a self-proclaimed foodie to handle the basics with ease, chopping, dicing, mixing, but instead Meghan heavily relies on the culinary crew to take care of these essential tasks. Whether it's preparing ingredients or managing the more complicated parts of a recipe, it seems the real work is done behind the scenes, leaving Meghan to smile and stir the pot. This foodie reinvention feels strikingly similar to her approach to royal duties. Just like her short-lived time as a working royal, Meghan's commitment to cooking seems shallow and fleeting. What's more, her attempts to present herself as a relatable home chef feel contrived, more like a performance than a genuine passion. In the end, Meghan's latest reinvention as a foodie appears to be just another role she's playing, adding to the long list of identities she's tried on. Whether it's her lack of culinary skill or her questionable dedication, it's hard not to see this as just another attempt to stay relevant. And like many of her past roles, it seems destined to be short-lived. When it comes to Meghan Markle's version of cooking, it feels more like a photo shoot than an actual kitchen session. Her role seems to involve showing up, looking chic, and letting everyone else do the real work. Perhaps her idea of home cooking is offering vague, enthusiastic commentary from a safe distance while others handle the heat. Let's talk about appearances. For someone who allegedly spends hours in the kitchen honing her culinary skills, Meghan seems unaware of basic kitchen practicality like tying back her hair. Instead, she insists on wearing her long, untamed locks while cooking, a choice that's neither hygienic nor practical. Forget food safety after all, why let a few stray hairs in the soup spoil a perfectly styled photo op? Meghan's attempt to look the part of a relatable, down-to-earth chef only highlights how little she understands about the actual labor that goes into cooking. It feels more like she's playing dress-up, trying on yet another role in her ongoing quest for a relatable public image. Rather than getting her hands dirty, she seems content to let others do the heavy lifting while she focuses on maintaining her polished look. In the end, Meghan's culinary persona seems to be more about style than substance. Her focus on appearance and her detachment from the real work involved in cooking only reinforce the idea that this is just another role she's trying on. And like many of her previous attempts, it falls short of being genuine, leaving us wondering if there's any real passion behind the performance. Although her ventures into politics, charity work, and activism have been met with mixed reactions, this latest pursuit feels more like a staged act than a true passion. It's hardly surprising that she appears more focused on getting the perfect camera angles than actually honing her culinary skills. Meghan's so-called foodie persona seems to be yet another facade, ready to be donned whenever attention calls. After all, when you're working so hard to remain in the spotlight, any role will suffice, even one for which you're woefully unprepared. That's the main content for today. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to share them in the comments below. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Goodbye for now, and see you next time.